Assalamu alaikum. In this part of the quality check, we're going to talk about, first of all, the quality of occlusion. The way you have set your teeth according to the occlusion that you have. Okay? So most of you have had, some of you had uppers only, or some of you had lowers only. And those that had these occlusion, these teeth always had an opposite to the arch that they have. Okay? So how do we check occlusion? When we want to mark your work, we are looking at the following features. We are looking at that the teeth are in line, the central fossa are in line together. This is on the cast itself. Okay, so our first view is on the cast itself. The distal end of the canine and the central fossa of the 7 over here. In between the central fossa of the teeth you have added should be on that line. Okay. On the free and saddle, we're also following the central fossa line, but here we are still governed by also the lower teeth position. So at least when you set the teeth according to the lower occlusion, we are giving priority to occlusion, that they are almost on one straight line. Try to rotate the teeth so their central fossa are all in one line. Okay, so this is on the cast itself. Then we hold the cast against its opposing using hand articulation. Okay, first let me remind you what were the contacts even with the teeth not there. Notice that in hand articulation we try to get our best articulation between upper and lower teeth. We emphasize the position of the midline. So the midline is over the midline. Notice on this side we have canine and premolar touch. Okay. On this side we also have a canine and premolar touch. And distally on the 7 and 8 we have an occlusion with the opposing arch. Okay. This is without teeth setting. So once I added teeth, I should not have any of these relations altered. So we go back and check our occlusion, midline over midline. We concentrate setting midline over midline as our first step. So we check in midline with midline. Okay. Once these are coinciding, we go and look at the bounded area first. We put the 7 in contact with the 7. And we watch the premolar and upper canines, lower premolar and upper canine contact, it's there. And we have another contact on the other side, okay? So we have these contacts already there, and then we check the occlusion of the artificial teeth, okay? So we want, as a reference, we want the teeth that were originally there in contact, even with the artificial teeth in. That means we have not lost the occlusal table or increased it by the teeth we added, okay? So what I'm looking at, I'm trying to find that the mesiobuccal of the upper 6 is in the mid-buccal point of the lower. The 5 is in between the 6 and 5 of the lower. The upper 4 is between the 5 and the 4 in the lower, okay? So this is the interdigitation we should have in bounded areas. The same as in the other. Okay, so we are looking for the location of the teeth. So the location of the teeth are okay. Then we look at their angulation. So any inclination away from the angulation you studied in dentures, we try to fix them. We have no spaces in between the teeth, so the position of the teeth are correct. There are no spaces between upper and lower teeth. If we look lingually, we should also see no spaces. Okay? If I have a space as this 7 and this 7, I try to make it clear for the camera. If I have the space lingually between the 7 and the 7, I need to lower the palatal cusps of the upper until they meet the lingual cusps of the lower. Okay? So these are how we check your occlusion. So that's the mark of occlusion. Now we're going to do the quality check of the outline of the wax on the cast. So the wax up of the denture base. In the denture we know that once we melt out the wax, any space occupied by the wax now will later be acrylic in the final denture. So what are the qualities we're looking at? We're looking at the qualities of the extensions on the palatal or lingual side. We'll be looking at the quality in between the teeth and in between natural teeth. We're going to look at the quality on the buccal side. And we're going to go and look back at our facial part of the clasp. Has it changed or not? Okay? So let's begin palatally of the upper. We said that the wax should extend above the survey line of abutment teeth. So any part of the survey line exposed should be covered by wax. Okay? So for abutment teeth, it should be covered up to the survey line. On this abutment, which happens to be a canine, we should be over the cingulum. Okay? This is the option where we have full coverage. This is the option where we have full coverage of the wax. Okay? The wax should also extend over the cingulum of the anterior teeth. It should not have a straight morphology. A straight morphology is not friendly to the tongue. We need to imitate in marginal gingiva going in between teeth, so it should go in a zigzag form. It's higher at the interdental papilla area, lower at the cingulum area, okay? So it follows this zigzag form. On the other abutment tooth, it should be covering the survey line, okay? The wax also should go interdentally between the teeth, the artificial teeth. From the last distal molar till the end of the denture, it should be coming down in a smooth form without any steps. We would prefer not to have such step here. Remember that any step in the acrylic and the teeth will be a plaque accumulation area. So we need to eliminate this step by trying 1 millimeter or 2 millimeter below the marginal gingiva here up to the end of the denture as one piece, okay? One slope. On the other side, same applies. Interdental papilla between the artificial teeth are going in between, اللي هي festooning, okay? No plaque retention areas are left. Any space between the artificial and the natural tooth is covered by wax. So we have either tooth to tooth contact or wax to tooth contact, okay? In cases where we select teeth, the best scenario is tooth to tooth contact at all locations. But if we have the problem with occlusion, we're giving priority to occlusion. The interdigitation is a priority. So that's why with the good interdigitation, we're still left with space. This space, we cover it with wax. Okay? Now, the extension from here till the free end saddle on this side comes in a form that it's a straight line trying to join them together. But once we cross the central part of the palate, we usually don't cross it by oblique lines. It's better to be here perpendicular to the mid-palatine suture, okay? It's more friendly to the tongue. It's more friendly to the tongue to cross this middle part horizontally, not obliquely, okay? Some of you, or most of you, when doing the wax up, had ignored the first step of wax up. Usually we follow in dentures, if you remember, that we want to record the full depth and width of the sulcus. So we should extend our wax up to the land area. Do you remember the land area? Which is the artificial part of the cast. But it protects the sulcus. The sulcus, the inner line of this land area is the width of the sulcus. So remember that your wax should extend to the full depth and width of the wax. So you should extend up to the line here. So if we go back to the cast itself, so on the free end saddle area, we follow the denture rules. This is the free end saddle area. So if the cast before I began with, I should have drawn the inner line of the land area. And we should reach up to this line. We should cover the whole hamular notch area. So this will be our extension of the wax. But on the banded saddle area, we don't go that deep. We are sufficient with half of the way in between, okay? So this is only for applying for the free end saddle area. So once more, if I would judge this wax up, I would say it's a bit short because it did not go to the full depth and width. It went into the depth, but not the width of the sulcus, okay? And it also should go to the full length or extension of the hamular notch. I have some 1 millimeter here exposed of the hamular notch. So we should cover it as indentures, okay? So these are the rules of the upper outline. If I want to judge this work, this is one of the work done by your colleagues. One point I forgot to tell you is the uniform thickness of the wax. Do you notice that we have uniform thickness of the wax on this cast? How do I judge it? I could judge it by color. Even by color, it's a good guide. Why? Because this wax is reddish in color or pinkish, and this is yellow. So if I have a change in translucency of the wax, that means we have different thicknesses. Look, if we can notice it better here. So we have dark wax here, light wax here. That means this is thicker than this one. Usually what we should have is uniform thickness, okay? Now with good wire bending, we should not see the wires going through the wax. So the thickness of this wax is around 3 millimeters. We might reduce it up to 2 with the finishing procedures, but not less. So around 3 millimeters thickness. With this thickness, we should not see the wires. If we see the wires exposed through the wax on this side, that means we had high wire bending. The wire bending was far away from the pellet on the other side. You can see it here, for example. So some of you that had, when we were marking them, had high wire bending, they will face this problem, where the wire is showing through almost on the surface of the wax. What is the best solution for this? Not adding more wax. If we add more wax, that means the acrylic is thicker, and patient could not tolerate thick wax or thick dentures, okay? So the real solution for this is re-bending the palatal area of the wire, the tag area of the wire, to make it closer to the palate, okay? So it's 1 millimeter away from the palate, from the palatal side, but it's also 1 millimeter away from the polished surface side. And the wax over it should not be more than 3 millimeters over the areas where we have wires, okay? Also notice here that we don't have a clean finish line. It's a bit irregular. We should have clean finish lines at the edges, and it's sealed. Notice also here the extension. It's not extended to the full sulcus depth and width. It's not into the depth, and it's also not covering the width of the cast, okay? So it lacks in the free end saddle area the depth and the width of the sulcus. On this side, it comes down from the teeth in a very beautiful way, vertically. It runs down vertically. But if we notice here, we notice that it's ending with a thin wedge shape or a thin flush. We don't end dentures in a thin flush. We have to maintain the thickness up to the end of the denture, okay? Let me show it here. So the thickness that we have added of wax is maintained up to the end. So if you can see it here, this is ending with a flush. It's thin. It's thin on the margins. We should have the same thickness running all the way up to the end of the outline of our wax up, okay? So this is how we judge the wax up of the upper. The lower is all the same in terms of bounded areas and in terms of free and saddle extensions, buccally. We're only left with the lingual extensions. Okay, so we're left with the lingual extensions where we have to have, this is still unfinished work, but to show you the extension where we should follow from the abutment, we cover the survey line, we go down vertically, we extend to the full depth and width of the lower sulcus. So if I would judge this work, I would say it's short. So once more, on the lingual, we're following the same as the denture. What do we have in the denture? We have to have full record of the full depth and width of the wax, of the sulcus, okay? So the wax should be extending up to this line. What we said about being short from the tongue floor of the mouth and the tongue activity is for the wire, not the wax, the acryl. The acryl, what we have recorded here is the functional depth and width of the sulcus. We are supposed to have an excellent impression. But what if we don't have an excellent impression? I have a lot of acryl to trim from, and the wire is far away from it. So in terms of extension, taking that this is a secondary cast, and with secondary cast, we should have recorded the functional depth and width of the sulcus. The wax should be going all till the end of the sulcus lingually, okay? So these are the features on the lower, other than the upper. We also have that wax over the cingulum of the teeth. Yes, this is correct in this case. And they are going in a zigzag form. And we also need our final finish of the wax to be all polished and smooth, because this will all go into acrylic. So smooth, polished addition of wax will produce a smooth acrylic finish on the denture once we finish flasking, okay? Here I want to emphasize the features of the wax up of the teeth in terms of the outline. So you would notice that the interdental papilla is filled in between the artificial tooth and the natural tooth. So any spaces that were created because we gave the occlusion a priority, it's covered by the wax. Also you find the spaces occlusally also are covered by wax, okay? Look at the extension at the border area, because this is the free and saddle area. We follow the extension of the denture. So we'd find that the land area is exposed and the wax is reaching to the land area. Okay, so only the land area is exposed, and we also could see that we have the concavity there. So once, yes, we filled in the land area, but we don't make this continuous with the teeth. We produce the concavity by this, okay? And you would also notice that the teeth are clean. There are some grooves for the roots here. The marginal gingiva is created. The teeth are clean from wax. Distally, from the tooth down, the wax is extending with no plaque retention areas. And it's reaching to the full depth of the hamular notch. So the hamular notch here is not exposed. Also, we find that the wax is extending not beyond the vibrating line. It's almost straight in this middle part area, then it curves. Now, the abutment, what I want to concentrate on is the relation of the wax with the abutment tooth. Now, this tooth, or this molar, has a clasp on it. That means we need a sufficient reciprocation. Sufficient reciprocation happens when the wax is extending above the survey line, it fills in the interdental papilla, and it fills in the proximal surface of the tooth. This encirclement of the reciprocation produces the best result to resist the action of the clasp while insertion and removal. Once more, the occlusal table, the central fossa of the teeth are in a straight line. Any spaces between the natural tooth and the artificial tooth is filled in with wax. The abutment tooth, the other abutment tooth, is covered over the cingulum. Now this is slightly over covered, but while we're going to go with the finishing, we will reduce it to the correct location, which is almost 1 or 2 millimeters just below this. This is the open margin design. We gave you an option where you could cover the full margins with the interdental papilla, and we gave you the option to open it. Now the reason for this is the marginal gingiva is very sensitive tissue. So we need either to clear away from it and allow for plaque accumulation not to accumulate in this area, or to fill over it, covering the cingulum of the teeth, if this was the case of full coverage. So we don't end in the middle here. So this is the open design. Now because we have this canine and premolar, so we have enough space to leave this 6 to 8 millimeters freedom for the marginal gingiva to be healthy and be stimulated by the tongue well and have a self-cleansing effect. Once more, this is an abutment with a clasp on. We can notice that the wax is going around the tooth above the survey line, and this might be reduced a bit with the finishing a bit less than this. Wax is in between the teeth. The thickness, as you could see here, is uniform between the anterior and posterior part. It's all uniform You can see it through the color. The color is uniform. The edges are with the same. It's finished at the edges very well. And the posterior edge, we can thin it a bit when we are finishing to produce the bevel at the end, because the patient don't tolerate very thick material. But as a beginning, we begin by the same thickness all over, and then we might reduce the thickness here just to produce a bevel to make it more friendly to the tongue. Okay, so these are the features of the wax up. On the bounded area, we are left with the bounded area extension. We don't need to cover the full sulcus depth and width, because we are depending for support a part on the teeth and the bounded saddle area. Wax is filling in interdental papilla. Now going from the proximal surface of the abutment downwards, I don't have anything going buccally to this. Okay. Also going from the proximal surface downwards, nothing is going on the buccal surface of the tooth to this side. So we usually limit ourselves to the proximal surfaces of abutment teeth, because we want the denture to go in and out easily when it's ready. Okay, so these are the features for the open design for the anterior area, because in the first demo we gave you the fully covered palatal coverage, but now we're showing you the open design. Okay, this shows you a good example of the relation of the wax up with the natural and artificial tooth. Between the natural and artificial tooth, we need to cover in the interdental papilla, but we should not extend the wax beyond the proximal surface of this natural tooth. So we go down vertically from the natural tooth downwards. Anything going buccally should not be there. Okay? At the end, we just rotate it. Here we have avoided the frenum a bit. We can place a notch here. We go there, up there. But here also we see that we don't have interdental papilla. You see that we have the interdental papilla missing here. So this should be covered as this one. But once more, from the proximal surface, this is deficient. So this shows you the overextended, and this shows you the underextended wax, where it should be. Okay? The relation of the clasp with the tooth is correct in terms of we have marginal gingival clearance. This is very clear here. Proximally, the wax is embedding the wire, and this is also clear here. Here you notice that we gave the occlusion a priority over the contacts. But if I had a contact, if I selected the correct side of the teeth and I had contact, I would have a contact between the natural and the artificial tooth. And this wire might be high. If it interferes with this contact, I could lower it by bending, or I could trim from the mesial area of the tooth over here. Okay? Also notice that other than the contact, we could notice that the size of the teeth is small just by looking at the occlusal gingival dimension. Compare it with the canine. Naturally, we should have the premolar almost the same dimensions of the canine in terms of occlusal gingival height. So this is a good example showing you small teeth, how to deal with small teeth, how to fill in the wax with spaces. An over waxed denture, it will extend. This will prevent the denture going in and out. This is an underextended margin where it will accumulate food and plaque, and we should not leave it like this. And this is a small tooth selected. It should have been correct size and with a good contact with the other tooth. This shows you high wire bending where the wire is in the contact area, preventing such contact if we had the correct tooth size.